Let's kick things off with a puzzle and a quote from a pretty unlikely source. Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, that Isaac Newton, one of the greatest physicists of all time. The story goes he said this right after losing an absolute fortune in a market bubble. And man, does that perfectly capture the puzzle we're digging into today. This epic clash between the clean certainty of math and the messy chaos of human beings.
So, that fast forwards us to a much more recent crisis. After 2008, a lot of fingers started pointing at the quants, the physicists and mathematicians who brought all their complicated models to the world of finance. So, here's the question. If the greatest physicist in history couldn't crack the market, why in the world did Wall Street think hiring a whole army of them was a good idea?
To get to the bottom of that, we actually have to go way back. This story doesn't start with the greed and slicked back hair of the 1980s. Nope. It starts in Paris, right at the turn of the 20th century, with this absolute genius who, tragically, almost nobody's ever heard of, Louis Bachelier.
Now, Bachelier's big idea was, well, it was completely revolutionary. He was the very first person to describe how markets move using math, with a concept he called a random walk. Just picture a drunk guy stumbling down a long hallway. Every step he takes, it's a total coin toss whether he veers left or right. What Bachelier said was, hey, in the short term, a stock's price, it's basically the same thing, just as unpredictable.
And this is where it gets crazy, just how far ahead of his time he really was. Bachelier publishes his big thesis on financial random walks in 1900. 5 years later, who comes along? Albert Einstein. And he uses the exact same mathematics to describe the random jiggling of dust particles in water, a discovery that literally helped prove atoms exist. So Einstein becomes, Einstein, a total legend. And Bachelier, his work gets tossed aside by the academics because it was about money, not serious math. He was just too early.
Okay, so this idea that markets are random isn't some new thing, but that opens up a way bigger and way more important question. Is all randomness the same? The answer, as another brilliant thinker would show us, is a huge no. And this is where another pioneer, Benoît Mandelbrot, comes in, showing us this crucial difference. See, most of the standard financial models you hear about are built on what he called mild randomness. Think back to our drunkard. His path is random, sure, but over time, he kind of stays near the middle. Big swings are possible, but they're incredibly rare. But Mandelbrot argued that markets follow wild randomness. And his analogy? A drunken firing squad. Yeah, most shots might land somewhere near the target, but every so often a wild shot goes way, way off. And these extreme events, these fat tails, they happen way more often than a nice clean bell curve would have you believe. One single bad day can literally erase a decade of your gains. Poof, gone. Okay, so this is all great, fascinating theory, right? But the real question is, can you actually use it to make money, to get a real edge? Well, the answer didn't come from some fancy university. It came from the smoky casinos of Las Vegas. So let me introduce you to the incredible Ed Thorp, a physicist and mathematician who basically set out to systematically beat any game of chance he could find. First, he created the world's first real working card counting system to crush blackjack. Then he teams up with Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, no big deal, to build a literal wearable computer to predict where a roulette ball would land. And, after Vegas basically told him never come back, he set his sights on the biggest casino of them all, Wall Street. And he used the exact same rigorous, math-based thinking to make an absolute fortune. So what was Thorp's secret weapon? It wasn't just about finding an edge. It was about managing risk. And for that, he used a formula called the Kelly criterion. At its heart, it's this beautifully simple idea that tells you not just what to bet on, but the optimal amount of your money to bet, based on how big your statistical advantage is. It's the math that proves what Thorp knew in his gut. In a world full of randomness, having even a tiny bit of extra information, well, that's money. Okay, so this all brings us right back to where we started. If these tools, created by physicists, were so powerful, why are they getting blamed for nearly blowing up the entire global economy? Well, it turns out the problem wasn't the math. Nope, it was a total failure to think like a physicist. And really, this is the key takeaway, the big lesson here. A real physicist knows that a model is just that, a model. It's a simplified map of reality. It's not the actual territory. It's a tool for getting close, and it's built on assumptions that can, and definitely will, fail at some point. The catastrophe of 2008? That's what happens when Wall Street grabs these amazing tools from physics, but leaves the most important part behind. that critical, skeptical mindset that is always, always questioning a model's limits.
And you know what the most infuriating part of all this is? These warnings weren't new. Guys like Mandelbrot had been shouting for decades that the standard models were dangerously broken and that they ignored the huge risks. But even when people like Ed Thorp proved that a better way of thinking about risk could make you incredibly rich, the bigwigs in mainstream economics, they just wouldn't listen.
And so I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. In the world of finance, where a better idea can be worth billions of dollars, you think the best ideas would always win, right? So why does our economic system seem so stubborn, so resistant to new thinking? Why do the gatekeepers in the universities, on Wall Street, in the government, seem to just plug their ears and ignore the very ideas that could protect all of us from the next great madness of men?